The EU should undermine national homogeneity, says UN Migration Chief Peter Sutherland, now deceased as far as I'm aware, I think. He was the man responsible for the original Global Migration Forum, which brought together 160 nations to discuss policy. Those policies in time became what is now known as the Migration Compact that we all signed quietly behind the disguise of a so-called Brexit negotiation process. And within all that legislation that was finalised on the back of a fabricated refugee fake crisis, which was never a crisis to begin with, it quite clearly said that our concerns were somewhat quelled by them claiming to us all that it's not making immigration happen right away. Oh no, things are going to be done in their home countries to prevent them from having to emigrate or migrate or whatever it may be. And we all know, or I said anyway, that what that really meant was the fact they were going to use global warming in time as a means to get these people over here, and we've all signed our lives away, so there's not really much that could be done to prevent it. And you fast forward to where we are now, and it's becoming more and more apparent that this is one of the ways that we are going to see a never-ending influx of African migration from sub-Saharan Africa, and it's all safe and legal, and it's a means to end our aging populace while helping them with their population, which is set to double. Ah yes, if global warming really is real, which I really do beg to differ all the claims being made, considering the Green Party. Where's the concern being from these people? You know, Caroline Lucas and the clan all stood there silently as each election would come round and say, vote for me because global warming's a thing. And then if they didn't get voted in, oh well, vote, there's always next time. You know, they spent more time talking about fucking Brexit than they did about global warming or climate change. Now, my mistake. You know, in the early 2000s, Al Gore was spewing out the same BS, and in the 1970s and 80s, it was Bernie Sanders. What happened to the hole in the ozone layer? You know, what happened to the melting ice caps? You know, and just because the Green Party and all that have decided to take to the streets of London and proclaim that things need to be done immediately, it's quite funny when you listen to some of them explain themselves, because they always seem to come away with the same thing. The UN said XYZ. Oh well, the UN said it. It must be gospel then. Not like the UN's behind the whole fucking thing. But anyway, so if that wasn't bad enough, if they don't come over here to flee the perils of a warm climate, then Guy Verhofstadt is your man to make sure that one way or another we're probably fucked, or we are fucked. Pardon my French. Let's create a single Euro-African economic area would have an enormous potential that remains untapped. 1.5 billion consumers, 20 trillion in value, able to rival with China, the same country that's exploiting and bleeding dry the African continent as we speak. Why can't these people go to China? Why can't these people go to one of the Asian countries? Why is it that it just seems to be the way of it? That they decide one day, wherever they may be, or for whatever reason it may be, to jump on a fucking boat, or they decide that they want to leave where they live, and they just head to Europe. And we just get told, so matter-of-factly, that that's the way it's going to have to be. Oh, they're fleeing, whatever it may be. And, you know, then they head over here, and we have to just kind of stand there and accept it. You know, if I had my way, or if I was in charge, I'd be telling these people to F off, like I would have been doing when the refugee crisis slowly became a migrant crisis. You know, all those women and children from Syria, and then when you see them, it's a bunch of middle-aged and young adolescent African fucking men, and it's always African men, mainly, that still come over to this day, and people stand and scratch their head. Why is there so much anti-refugee sentiment? Maybe because they're not refugees, you know? You've gone past the days of trying to pretend that they were refugees, and you're just open about it now. Migrant crisis, refugee crisis, migrants, refugees, one and the same, are they not? They're all fleeing global warming now anyway. What's new? Fuck. So, some Swedish politician, he's the latest to come out. It was David Attenborough last week, telling us how it is, how it's going to be, unless things are drastically changed. And let's be honest, in the wake of the Migrant Compact, quite clearly stating that climate change will play a factor in migration, it was pretty obvious. Putting pen to paper back then was the end of it, really. So this is the beginning of the end. This is the beginning of the Dog and Pony Show in this narrative. You know, they have to ramp up the fear porn regarding climate change. And if it's really as bad as they make out, then I don't really think that there's much that could be done to prevent it. Hence the Migrant Compact. So, this guy goes on to say, Jesus, fucking hell, man. The Committee on the Environment is the most promising committee in Parliament. But Per Holmgren also advocates that the EU Parliament should work more on preventing poverty, distributing migration, and doing more to prevent tragedies like that in Syria. Oh, the Syrian refugee crisis. I wonder how many Syrians actually did manage to get into Europe, considering all their boats would have been pitched by the African men. Wow. And in the EU, one must understand the climate aspect behind conflicts. Oh, the climate aspect, because that is now all of a sudden out of the blue a factor. How convenient. You know? Let's not forget the Syrian refugee crisis was never actually a crisis in terms of Syrians desperately trying to escape the clutches of ISIS, because Syria was still heavily populated by Syrians well into the fight after the crisis started. And announcing to us publicly that a boy is supposedly washing up on shore, that boy being Alan Kurdi, that then gave the green light for Syrians to start making the crossing. Nothing was put in place to help these people get over here. There was nothing done to get Syrians from A to B. No. It was just basically a free-for-all. It was the green light for the whole of Middle East and Africa. If they decided to leave where they came from, they too could pretend to be Syrian for a day and go wherever the fuck they want. Pardon my French again. And then, none of this is the way that they make it out to be. And I can't help but wonder to myself if the recent acceleration in this talk of climate change and 2030 sustainable developments, rid of communism, you know, can't help but wonder to myself if it's all just part of the plan, because nothing would surprise me at this point. He goes on to say, unfortunately, because of the big players today, we are on the road with 3 degrees of warming, and somewhere along the way, much of Africa and the Middle East will become more or less uninhabited, he says. And by saying that, what does he mean? He obviously means they're all going to come here, because where else would they go? They're not going to go to China or Japan or Singapore or anywhere. They're probably not even going to try and chance their arm in New Zealand or Australia. Oh, no. They're just going to come over here because it's safe, legal and orderly. You know? Wow. You know, the months that went on before the compact was signed, the UN kept coming out. I made videos about it at the time. And I said that the UN was actively encouraging them by the things that we're saying, because they were putting more emphasis, or encouraging more emphasis to be done to make sure that borders, or the waters I should say, were more heavily occupied by NGOs and rescue ships, just in case, to prevent any deaths, to prevent any drownings. And all that really did was incentivize these people to do what they were doing. All these talks that you've heard about the years, when they're pretending that they needed to crack down on the smugglers are the NGOs. It's pretty obvious, considering every single one of these pickups that occurs, they take them here. There's nothing in the rule book that says they need to come back here. Yes, you can go and get them, as it says in maritime law. It doesn't say anything about taking them back here afterwards. They do that off their own accord. And then it got to that point. For a while, they were doing it numerous times a day. They were picking them up from Libya and taking them here. There's proof of that, evidence. And then, of course, as the years rolled on and it became more and more apparent what the F was going on, they just started sailing about on the off chance that they came across them. And just by chance, they always did. And it resulted in, as I said, the compact being signed eventually. So the EU is neglecting its humanitarian duty and opinion piece, and I love the way that they talk about this. I look at all these Syrian children here. They must have heard the gunshots. The wind must have carried the gunfire from Syria across. Fucking hell, man. Bunch of men. Always men. Naval ships will no longer be part of EU's Operation Sophia. Blah, 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 blah. 2 years ago, Social Democrats government of Italy urged refugees to be redistributed throughout the EU. Most member states, not just Hungary and Poland, opposed this. Then in the summer of 2018, Italy's new populist government barred all rescued refugees on EU vessels from disembarking at Italy's ports. The far-right minister delivered on his callous agenda and was happy to portray himself as someone who stands up to Brussels. And quite fucking right. These NGOs are just sailing about, picking these people up, most of the time at arranged spots, and then taking them to the nearest port and then dumping them because that's somehow a rescue mission. Now, a rescue mission, as far as I was concerned, is people drowning, but yet these people are all equipped with life jackets. They've all got satellite phones to be able to tell these Coast Guards where their coordinates are, and they're always met. Then a rescue mission occurs, apparently. Get real. What will happen to these people who climb into unseaworthy rubber boats? They speak of it as if they're coming over here like the ending scenes of the Titanic. That's just not how it was occurring. Risking their lives to get from North Africa to Europe. And why are they risking their life? What gave them the incentive? What put the idea in their head that risking their life could have a good result at the ending of it? Where they're quite prepared to risk their life, and knowing full well that if their life is not ended, they will find themselves in Europe. Who gave them the idea that that was acceptable? What part of Syria are Africans from? You know what I mean? What gave them the incentive, the idea, and the knowledge that if they decide to take it upon themselves to risk their lives, they'll be met with reward? We'll even more refugees drown in the Mediterranean. They're not fucking refugees if they're from Africa. I mean, come on now. Wow, I get so annoyed reading this BS. Like, it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. We can't know for certain, as some politicians have claimed, whether the possibility of being rescued by an EU ship actually entices some to climb into the unseaworthy boats in the first place and head for Europe. Of course it's incentivizing them. It would be a different story if they were being turned back, if they were picked up and taken right back. And of course, Libya was doing that. And then they decided to create a narrative that they're being really mistreated in Libya, so they can't take them back there all of a sudden. Oh, fucking boo-hoo. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, but sympathy really does wear thin at this point. You know? How are we? You can't expect people to feel sorry for refugees when it's not refugees we've been seeing. You know what I mean? Look at fucking Cali, for example. What a dump. The EU is about to continue training and equipping the Libyan Coast Guard, hoping it will prevent refugees from attempting to make it across the Med to Europe. Does this mean everything is taken care of? No. Libya's current unstable political state means the Coast Guard is unable to patrol the entire length of the coast, and some people smugglers are apparently working hand in hand with these patrols to the people smugglers that don't exist. Come on now. Come on. That's BS. Experts familiar with EU diplomacy say there is no such thing as a common migration and refugee policy for the bloc. These words are grist to the mill of Europe's far-right populists who are busy stoking a fear of migrants ahead of the parliament elections. Incidentally, Operation Sophia was named after a Somali girl who was born in the Italian city of Tarrant after her pregnant mother was rescued by a fucking ship. Oh yeah, Syria. What part of Somalia? Syria. Jesus, you know what I mean? The end of the Sophia means the EU has failed its attempt to establish a policy despite years of endless discussions. The interior ministers could never agree on how rescue refugees should be redistributed around the bloc, how the asylum system should be reformed, or which countries should carry responsibility for respective asylum seekers. And measures to boost security in the EU's external borders have postponed until 2027, and the talk of repatriation agreement of creating transit camps inside the EU and disembarkment points in North Africa have led to naught, although European leaders last summer lauded the plans as a pivotal step in deterring migrants, and that's why they went ahead and signed the UN Migration Compact. But of course, do we need to pretend that it's nothing to do with this? Come on now. Ah, man, come on. Alright, anyway, I think I'll leave in that notes. Aye. Peace.